Not everything has to be about you. My mom messaged as I sat alone at my graduation dinner. 2 hours later, my uncle posted, "Proud of the real winner." It was my sister holding a tennis trophy. I paid the $2,300 bill, drove home, and canceled every bill I'd been quietly covering for the entire family for years. By next day, my phone was exploding. I, 26M, graduated summa cum laude from law school last Friday. 3 years of 18-hour days, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on instant ramen while my classmates went to bars and parties. I'd worked 2 part-time jobs throughout school just to keep my head above water financially. My family promised they'd be there for the graduation dinner. All of them. Mom, Dad, my younger sister, my uncle who raised me after Dad's drinking got bad, even my grandmother who rarely left the house anymore. I'd made reservations at Romano's, not exactly fine dining, but nice enough for the occasion. I specifically chose Friday because everyone said they were free. I sat at the table for 45 minutes, watching the waiter refill my water glass and give me increasingly sympathetic looks. The breadbasket remained untouched except for the single roll I'd nervously picked at. Other families around me celebrated their graduates with laughter and champagne toasts. I kept checking my phone, hoping for traffic updates or apology texts. Nothing. Finally, I ordered for myself. Chicken parmesan, a small salad. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The waiter asked if I wanted dessert, and I almost laughed. Who celebrates alone with dessert? My phone buzzed during my second cup of coffee. A text from Mom. Not everything has to be about you. Some of us have real responsibilities. I stared at the message for a full minute. Real responsibilities. 3 years of law school, while working wasn't real responsibility, apparently. I'd been helping pay Mom's mortgage since my second year, covering Dad's car insurance when his license got suspended again, even sending money for my sister's tennis lessons and tournament fees. But somehow, today wasn't important enough for them to show up. I paid the $2,300 bill, dinner for 8 people who never came, plus tip, and walked to my car in the restaurant parking lot. The evening air felt thick and suffocating. I'd parked next to a family loading into their SUV, the graduate daughter still wearing her cap and gown, surrounded by flowers and proud relatives taking pictures. The drive home took 20 minutes through suburban streets lined with perfect houses and manicured lawns. I kept the radio off, letting the silence fill the space where celebration should have been. My apartment felt especially empty when I unlocked the door. The congratulatory cards I'd hoped to open with family sat unopened on the kitchen counter. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. For 3 years, I'd been quietly covering bills that my family couldn't, or wouldn't, handle themselves. Mom's mortgage payment when she came up short. Dad's car insurance. My sister's tennis coaching fees and equipment. Uncle's medical bills when his insurance lapsed. Even grandmother's prescription costs when Medicare didn't cover everything. The monthly automatic payments looked innocent enough on the screen, but when I added them up, I was spending nearly $3,000 every month keeping my family afloat. $36,000 a year I could have saved for my own future, my own apartment, maybe even a decent car instead of the 12-year-old Honda that barely started on cold mornings. I canceled every single automatic payment. Mom's mortgage. Canceled. Dad's car insurance. Canceled. Sister's tennis academy fees. Canceled. Uncle's supplemental health insurance. Canceled. Grandmother's prescription delivery service. Canceled. Each click felt like lifting a weight off my shoulders. I'd been so focused on being the responsible one, the reliable one, that I'd forgotten I was 26 years old and barely keeping my own life together. 2 hours after I'd sat alone at that restaurant table, my phone lit up with a notification from Uncle's Facebook. I opened it out of morbid curiosity. The post showed my sister holding a shiny tennis trophy, surrounded by my entire family at some sports bar. Mom and Dad flanked her with huge smiles. Uncle had his arm around her shoulder. Even grandmother was there, looking more animated than I'd seen her in months. The caption read, "Proud of the real winner. Sarah takes first place at the regional tennis tournament." The real winner. I screenshot the post and studied every face. These were the same people who couldn't spare 2 hours for my law school graduation, but had driven across town to celebrate my sister's tennis trophy at a sports bar. The same people who sent me bills and emergency expenses, but had money for drinks and appetizers. I turned off my phone and went to bed. Saturday morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. I made actual breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee that wasn't instant, and sat by the window reading. For the first time in months, I wasn't mentally calculating which family bill needed paying or checking my bank balance with anxiety. My phone had been buzzing since around 9 a.m., but I ignored it until noon. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, 12 voicemails. The first few messages were casual. Mom asking about lunch plans, Dad needing gas money, Sister wanting to know if I'd seen her Facebook post about the tournament. Then the tone shifted rapidly. Mom had received a notification that her mortgage payment was declined. The bank called her at 10 a.m. She tried calling me 6 times. Dad's insurance company sent a cancellation notice via email. His coverage would lapse in 72 hours. Uncle's medical appointment got canceled because his insurance wasn't active. The tennis academy called my sister to discuss the unpaid balance on her account. By afternoon, the messages turned desperate, then angry. Mom demanded to know what I thought I was doing. Dad called me selfish and ungrateful. Sister accused me of sabotaging her tennis career out of jealousy. Uncle, who'd always been the calm mediator, left a voicemail asking if I was having some kind of breakdown. I made a sandwich and read each message carefully. The entitlement was staggering. Not one of them acknowledged missing my graduation. Not one apologized or even mentioned it. They were upset about money, not about hurting me. The final straw came at 6 p.m. Mom sent a long text explaining how disappointed she was in my childish behavior. She reminded me that family takes care of family, that I made good money now and should be grateful for the opportunities they'd given me. She ended by saying I was acting like a spoiled brat and needed to fix the payment problems immediately. I typed back, I sat alone at my graduation dinner last night while you all celebrated Sarah's tennis trophy. The person you called a spoiled brat just spent $2,300 on a dinner for people who couldn't be bothered to show up. I've been covering $3,000 monthly in family expenses for 3 years. That ends now. My phone rang immediately. I didn't answer. Update 1. Sunday brought a parade of visitors to my apartment. I watched through the peephole as Mom, Dad, and Uncle took turns knocking and calling my name. I stayed quiet, reading a book on the couch until they gave up. Sister showed up alone around dinner time. She looked upset, not angry like the others, but genuinely confused. She knocked softer than the others and asked if we could talk. I opened the door. She explained that she didn't know I'd been paying for her tennis lessons. She thought Mom and Dad covered it. She'd assumed everyone was too busy Friday night to make dinner, not that they'd chosen her tournament over my graduation. She said Mom told everyone I'd canceled the dinner myself. This revelation hit differently than the angry messages. My sister wasn't malicious. She was 19 and had been kept in the dark about the family's financial reality. She apologized sincerely and asked what she could do to help fix things. I told her the truth about the monthly payments, about how I'd been working myself to exhaustion to keep everyone else comfortable. She listened without interrupting, and by the end, she looked sick. She offered to get a job to pay for her own tennis expenses. She said she'd talk to Mom and Dad about what really happened Friday night. She even offered to pay me back for the graduation dinner, though I knew she didn't have that kind of money. I appreciated her honesty, but I told her the damage was done. I wasn't angry with her specifically, but I couldn't keep enabling the family's financial irresponsibility. Update 2. Monday morning brought a different strategy. Dad showed up at my office. He'd been sober for 6 months, longer than any previous stretch in my adult life, and looked healthier than I'd seen him in years. He asked if we could grab coffee and talk man to man. At the coffee shop, he admitted he'd known about some of the payments I was covering. He said he felt ashamed that his son was paying his car insurance, but Mom insisted it was temporary until he got back on his feet. He'd been looking for steady work, but kept getting passed over due to his record. He apologized for missing the graduation and acknowledged that nothing should have been more important than being there for me. He said Mom had convinced everyone that I preferred small celebrations and that the dinner was just a casual thing. But then he asked me to reconsider cutting off the payments. He explained that without car insurance, he couldn't drive to job interviews. Without transportation, he'd likely start drinking again. He wasn't trying to manipulate me, he said, just being honest about his limitations. This conversation was harder than my sister's. Dad's addiction was real, and I knew the potential consequences of him losing hope. But I also knew that enabling him hadn't helped him get sober. It had just made it easier for him to avoid taking responsibility. I told him I'd help him research job placement programs and public transportation options, but I wouldn't resume the insurance payments. He nodded sadly and said he understood. Update 3. The real confrontation came Tuesday evening. Mom arrived with Uncle as backup. She'd clearly prepared her arguments. She brought bank statements showing her mortgage payment history, documentation of the family's medical expenses, and a list of everything she claimed to have sacrificed for my education growing up. She accused me of financial manipulation and emotional blackmail. She said I was using money as a weapon to control the family and punish them for one missed dinner. She demanded that I restore all the payments immediately and apologized for sending such a harsh text Friday night, though she maintained that I was overreacting to a simple scheduling conflict. Uncle tried to play mediator, suggesting a family meeting where everyone could air their grievances and work out a fair financial arrangement. He proposed that I continue covering some expenses in exchange for the family attending important events and showing more appreciation. I listened to their entire presentation without interrupting. When they finished, I asked one simple question. Why hadn't anyone called to explain they couldn't make dinner Friday night? Mom's answer revealed everything. She said they thought I'd understand that Sarah's tournament was a bigger priority because it was a regional competition and my graduation was just dinner. She said I could have my law school celebration anytime, but Sarah's tournament was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Uncle nodded along, adding that they assumed I'd be fine celebrating alone since I was always independent. They genuinely believed that my achievement was less important than my sister's tennis trophy. 3 years of law school, thousands of hours of studying, graduating with honors. All of that meant less to them than a regional tennis tournament. I told them both to leave. Update 4. By Wednesday, the financial pressure was showing. Mom's bank had sent a formal notice about the missed mortgage payment. Dad's car insurance had officially lapsed. The tennis academy suspended my sister's coaching until the account was current. But something interesting happened that morning. My sister called to tell me she'd gotten a job at a local restaurant. She'd also talked to her tennis coach about working part-time at the academy in exchange for reduced lesson fees. She was taking responsibility for her own expenses. Dad had connected with a job placement program through a sponsor. They specialized in helping people with criminal records find steady employment. He'd applied for 3 positions that didn't require personal vehicles. Mom and Uncle, however, had doubled down on their anger. Mom left voicemails alternating between guilt trips about the mortgage and threats to cut me out of the family completely. Uncle sent long text messages about family loyalty and how disappointed my late aunt would be in my behavior. The irony wasn't lost on me. The 2 family members who'd contributed least to the problem were taking the most responsibility for solving it, while the ones who'd created the financial mess were focused on blaming me. Update 5. Thursday brought an unexpected visitor, my grandmother. She'd taken 2 buses to reach my apartment, which was remarkable considering her mobility issues. She asked if she could come in for tea and a conversation. Grandmother had always been the family truth teller, the one person who called out everyone's nonsense without favoritism. She sat in my kitchen, sipped her tea, and told me she was proud of me for graduating law school and ashamed of the family for missing it. She also revealed something that changed my perspective entirely. She'd been contributing her own money to family expenses for years. Her Social Security and small pension had been supplementing Mom's mortgage payments, Dad's various needs, and even some of my sister's tennis costs. She'd never told anyone except Mom. She'd only learned about my financial contributions when Mom panicked about the mortgage and admitted the full scope of what I'd been covering. Grandmother was furious that Mom had allowed, even encouraged, me to take on such responsibility while hiding her own financial help. She told me that she supported my decision completely. She said the family had become comfortable with other people solving their problems, and that needed to change. She also mentioned that she'd stopped her own contributions as of this week. Before leaving, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $2,300, exactly the amount I'd spent on the graduation dinner. She said it was from her emergency fund, and she wanted me to have something positive from that night. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. She said it wasn't charity. It was payment for all the family photographs and memories I should have had from my graduation that were stolen from me. Update 6. Friday marked exactly 1 week since my graduation dinner. The family's financial crisis had reached a critical point. Mom received a 30-day notice from the bank. Without a payment soon, foreclosure proceedings would begin. She'd been calling family friends and distant relatives, trying to borrow money, but had found no takers. Dad's job search had yielded 2 interviews, both scheduled for the following week. The placement program was confident about his prospects, but he needed immediate transportation solutions. He'd started taking buses to meetings and seemed committed to staying sober regardless of the job situation. Sister had thrown herself into work with impressive determination. She'd picked up extra shifts and was already covering half her tennis expenses. Her coach had been so impressed with her work ethic that he'd offered her a permanent position with even better benefits. Uncle, however, had made a decision that surprised everyone. He'd decided to move in with grandmother to help with her care and reduce his own living expenses. He admitted that my cutting off his insurance payments had forced him to examine his own financial irresponsibility. Only Mom remained entirely focused on getting me to resume payments rather than addressing the underlying problems. Update 7. The breaking point came Saturday morning with a family intervention that I hadn't agreed to attend. I found Mom, Uncle, Dad, and Sister waiting in my apartment parking lot when I returned from the grocery store. They'd apparently been planning this ambush all week. Mom had prepared what amounted to a formal presentation. She'd calculated the total amount I'd contributed over 3 years and compared it to what she claimed to have spent on my childhood expenses. Her math suggested I still owed the family money. She demanded that I resume all payments immediately and contribute additional funds to catch up on the missed week. She said if I didn't agree, she'd be forced to sell the house and the family would be homeless because of my selfishness. Dad tried to distance himself from Mom's demands, saying he supported whatever decision I made. Sister openly disagreed with Mom's approach and said she was embarrassed by the ambush. Uncle remained silent until Mom finished her presentation. Then he surprised everyone by saying he thought I'd been more than generous and that the family needed to learn to stand on their own feet. The intervention backfired completely. Instead of pressuring me to comply, it showed me exactly which family members were willing to support my boundaries and which ones were only interested in my money. I told Mom that her presentation had convinced me I'd made the right decision. I said the intervention was manipulative and disrespectful, and that if she truly believed I owed the family money, she should take me to court. She stormed off, but Dad, Sister, and Uncle stayed behind to apologize for the ambush. They said they'd tried to talk Mom out of it, but she'd insisted everyone participate or she'd cut them off too. Final update. It's been 3 weeks now since I canceled the payments, and the dust has finally started to settle. Mom lost the house, but it turned out she'd been behind on payments long before I stopped helping. The bank revealed she'd missed several payments over the past year and had been using my contributions to cover other expenses rather than the mortgage. She's now living with a friend and working full-time for the first time in decades. Dad got hired at a manufacturing plant through the placement program. The job includes health insurance and transportation assistance for the first 6 months. He's maintained his sobriety and seems genuinely motivated to rebuild his life properly this time. Sister made the Tennis Academy's work-study program permanent and earned a partial scholarship for her coaching. She's learned to manage her own finances and has started saving money for the first time. She calls regularly but never asks for money. Uncle moved in with grandmother as planned, and they're both happier with the arrangement. He covers household expenses she can't manage, and she provides the stability he needed. His health problems are being addressed through proper insurance rather than emergency payments. Grandmother remains my strongest supporter. We have lunch every Sunday, and she often mentions how proud she is that I stood up for myself. As for me, I've started saving money for the first time in years. I'm considering putting a down payment on a house and maybe taking a vacation that isn't centered around family obligations. The most important change is in how the family treats me. Instead of assuming I'll handle their problems, they now ask for advice and support in appropriate ways. Sister wants help reviewing her budget. Dad asks for career guidance. Uncle seeks recommendations for grandmother's medical care. Only Mom remains angry and resentful. She sends occasional messages blaming me for her housing situation and claiming I destroyed the family. But everyone else has learned to set boundaries with her manipulation, and she's slowly being forced to take responsibility for her own choices. Looking back, the graduation dinner was just the catalyst. The real issue was that I'd spent years enabling behavior that wasn't helping anyone. By trying to protect my family from consequences, I'd prevented them from learning to solve their own problems. Sitting alone at that restaurant table was painful, but it led to the most important lesson of my adult life. Being generous doesn't mean being a doormat, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is refuse to enable their worst impulses. I finally feel like I'm living my own life instead of just funding everyone else's.